One of the fellows you're about to meet wrote the first article of impeachment against President Clinton. Bruce Fein did so because perjury is a legal crime, and Fein believed no one is above the law. A constitutional scholar, Bruce Fein served in the Justice Department during the Reagan administration and as general counsel of the Federal Communications Commission. Bruce Fein has been affiliated with conservative think tanks such as the American Enterprise Institute and the Heritage Foundation, and now writes a weekly column for the Washington Times and Politico.com. He's joined by John Nichols, the Washington correspondent for The Nation and an associate editor at the Capital Times. Among his many books is this most recent one, The Genius of Impeachment, The Founder's Cure for Royalism. Good to see you both. Bruce, you wrote that article of impeachment against Bill Clinton. Why did you think he should be impeached?
He was setting a precedent that placed the president above the law. I did not believe that the initial perjury or misstatements that came perhaps in a moment of embarrassment stemming from the Paula Jones lawsuit would have justified impeachment if he apologized. Even his second perjury before the grand jury, when Ken Starr's staff was questioning him, as long as he expressed repentance, would not have set an example of saying every man, if you're president, is entitled to be a law unto himself. I think Bush's crimes are a little bit different. I think they're a little bit more worrisome than Clinton's. You don't have to have... More worrisome than Clinton's. Because he is seeking more institutionally to cripple checks and balances and the authority of Congress and the judiciary to superintend his assertions of power. He has claimed the authority to tell Congress they don't have any right to know what he's doing with relation to spying on American citizens, using that information in any way that he wants, in contradiction to a federal statute called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. He's claimed authority to say he can kidnap people, throw them into dungeons abroad, dump them out into Siberia without any political or legal accountability. These are standards that are totally anathema to a democratic society devoted to the rule of law.
You're talking about terrifying power, but this is a terrifying time. People are afraid of those people abroad who want to kill us. Do you think in any way that justifies the claims that Bruce just said Bush has made?
I think that the war on terror, as defined by our president, is perpetual war. And I think that he has acted precisely as Madison feared. He has taken powers unto himself that were never intended to be in the executive. And frankly, that when an executive uses them in the way that this president has, you actually undermine the process of uniting the country and really focusing the country on the issues that need to be dealt with. Let's be clear. If we had a president who is seeking to inspire us to take seriously the issues that are in play and to bring all of the government together, he'd be consulting with Congress. He'd be working with Congress. And frankly, Congress, through the system of checks and balances, would be preventing him from doing insane things like invading Iraq.
In the past, presidents like Abe Lincoln, who confronted a far dire emergency in the Civil War than today, he sought congressional ratification and approval of his emergency measures. He didn't seek to hide them from the people and from Congress and to prevent there to be accountability. And of course, Congress did ratify what he had done. Secondly, sure, times can be terrifying, but that also should alert us to the fact that we can make mistakes. The executive can make mistakes. Take World War II. We locked up 120,000 Japanese Americans. We said they were all disloyal. Well, we got 120,000 mistakes. They lost their property, they lost their liberty for years and years because we made a huge mistake. And that can be true after 9/11 as well. No one wants to downgrade the fact that we have abominations out there and people want to kill us, but we should not inflate the danger and we should not cast aside what we are as a people. We can fight and defeat these individuals, these criminals, based upon our system of law and justice. It's not we have a fighting constitution. It's always worked in the past, but it still remains the constitution of checks and balances.
A fighting constitution?
It's a fighting constitution that enables us, that with the consent of Congress and the President, working hand in glove, consistent with due process of law, we have the authority to suspend habeas corpus in times of invasion or rebellion. It has enabled us to defeat all of our enemies consistent with the law.
But Congress did not stand up to George Bush for 5 years when it was controlled by Republicans, and I don't see any strong evidence that the Democrats are playing the role you think that Congress should be playing.
That is correct, but it doesn't exculpate the president that Congress has not sought immediately to sanction his excesses.
But it's blameworthy.
Exactly right. And Bill, this could not happen if we had a Congress that was aggressive. If we had a Congress that was like at Watergate when Nixon was president and he tried to obstruct justice and defeat the course of law. We have a Congress that basically is invertebrate. They are not sufficiently attuned. I don't mean to be...
Why? But why is Congress supine?
They are supine for two reasons. One, they are politicians who do not quite know how to handle the moment. And they know that something very bad happened on September 11th, 2001, now 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and they don't know how to respond to it. Whereas Bush and Karl Rove have responded in a supremely political manner to it, and frankly jumped around him. That's one part of the problem.
Jumped around Congress.
Jumped around Congress at every turn. I mean, they don't even tell them. They don't consult with them. They clearly have no regard for the checks and balances. But the other thing that's in play here, and I think this is a much deeper problem, I think the members of our Congress have no understanding of the Constitution. And as a result, they don't understand their critical role in the governance of the country. When the Republicans are in charge, they see their job as challenging or as supporting the president in whatever he does, defending him, making it possible for him to do whatever he wants. When the Democrats are in charge, they seem to see their role as trying to score political points, as opposed to what ought to be sort of a common ground.
Well, be political here, because the fact of the matter is, approaching an election year, you don't really think, do you, that the Democrats want to experience a backlash by taking on a Republican president in an election, or that the Republicans want to impeach an administration that they elected in 2000 and re-elected in 2004? There is a political element here, right?
There's always going to be a political element, Bill, but in the past there's always been a few statesmen who said, you know, the political fallout doesn't concern me as much as the Constitution of the United States. We have to keep that undefiled for our posterity, because if it's not us, it will corrode. It will disappear on the installment plan. And that has been true in the past when we had, during Watergate, Republicans. Remember, it was Barry Goldwater, Mr. Republican, who approached the president and said, you've got to resign. There have always been that cream who've said, the country is more important than my party. We don't have that anymore today.
So it seems to me the country is ahead of the Congress on this. How do you explain all this talk about impeachment today out across the country?
The people don't want to let this go. They do not accept Nancy Pelosi's argument that impeachment is, quote unquote, off the table, because I guess maybe they're glad she didn't take some other part of the Constitution off the table, like freedom of speech. But they also don't accept the argument that, oh, well, there's a presidential campaign going on, so let's just hold our breaths till Bush and Cheney get done. When I go out across America, what I hear is something that's really very refreshing and very hopeful about this country. An awfully lot of Americans understand what Thomas Jefferson understood, and that is that the election of a president does not make him a king for 4 years. That if a president sins against the Constitution and does damage to the Republic, the people have a right in an organic process to demand of their House of Representatives, the branch of government closest to the people, that it act to remove that president. And I think that sentiment is afoot in the land.
This is the first time I've heard talk of impeaching both a president and a vice president. I mean, as you saw in that poll, more people want to impeach Dick Cheney than George Bush. What's going on?
Well, this is an unusual pair of president-vice president, where the vice president is de facto president most of the time. And that's why most of the people recognize that these decisions, especially when it comes to overreaching with executive power, are the product of Dick Cheney and his aide David Addington, not George Bush and Alberto Gonzales or Harriet Miers, who don't have the cerebral capacity to think of these devilish ideas. And for that reason, they equate the administration more with Dick Cheney than with George Bush.
Bruce, you talk about overreaching. What in practical terms do you mean by that?
It means asserting powers and claiming that there are no other branches that have the authority to question you. Take, for instance, the assertion that he's made that when he is out to collect foreign intelligence, no other branch can tell him what to do. That means he can intercept your emails, your phone calls, open your regular mail, he can break and enter your home, he could even kidnap you, claiming, I'm seeking foreign intelligence, there's no other branch, Congress can't make it illegal, judges can't say this is illegal, I can do anything I want. That is overreaching. When he says that all of the world, all of the United States is a military battlefield, because Osama bin Laden says he wants to kill us there, and I can then use the military to go into your home and kill anyone there who I think is Al-Qaeda, or drop a rocket. That is overreaching. That is a claim even King George III didn't make at the time of the Revolution. That is clearly overreaching.